you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to have seen all that has been built in real life, in the real world. What I'm going to talk about is so far still imaginary. I have two roles. I'm from the architecture office b210, and I'm also a founder and a teacher at an architecture hobby school for children. So as a background, I'm going to talk about the exhibition that we did with our office, which was about visions for kindergarten spaces. But before that, I'm going to say a few words about the architecture school, because I think this is right now even a bigger change than the kindergarten exhibition. So we have had this school for 5 years in Estonia, and it's a hobby school. Kids come once a week, and we talk about architecture and we build models, and I think you have something similar here also. Another project is Explore Space, and this is the aim of it is to bring architecture to general schools. So this is a collection of architecture activities that any teacher of any subject can use in normal schools to learn about architecture, but learn about also the normal subjects. Then we have a project called School Space 2015. It's a kind of a competition that kids over the period of 5 months, they will study their school building, and in the end come up with a design of their own for a part of the school building. And then the last two topics are a bit very much in the beginning, but one is about space and physical activity. I think this is a very familiar topic, that kids are spending a lot of time on their phones or on computers and are not playing outdoors as they used to. So we are looking into ways of changing existing school buildings to improve physical activity. And lastly, we are working on a guideline document with the Ministry of Education to have architecture as an elective in Estonian high schools. And I think these activities are very important because we see how difficult it is to change the existing society and the way municipalities and the government think about kindergarten and school buildings. So we hope to grow a new society. But then about this exhibition, the Union of Estonian Architects has an annual exhibition, and every year they have a competition where architects are invited to propose a topic and a vision of what this exhibition should be like. And we proposed the topic of kindergarten space or kindergarten architecture. And the background story is that in Tallinn, there is also in other cities of Estonia, there is a tendency that kindergartens need expansion. Also, like in Vilnius, there are few kindergarten spaces or spots for kids, so we need more. But there is some demographic prognosis that says that we only need them for 5 years, and then we don't need them anymore. But this is a matter of belief, but this is what the municipality believes. So it happens that many kindergartens are having container extensions. So there is more space created, but they are containers, made out of containers. And there was a funny quote in one newspaper article that said that there is nothing really to worry about putting your kid in a container, because a container looks really like a normal kindergarten. And we read that, and then we thought that how come you can say that even about a normal kindergarten? How can these two things be compared? Why does a normal kindergarten look like a container? So we proposed this topic, and we invited 7 architects and 1 landscape architect office to propose visions for kindergartens, to show that sometimes it's contributed to the lack of the imagination of the architects that the kindergartens look like this, but we wanted to show that architects are full of visions, and as we got to know the people from kindergartens, they are full of visions and they are very happy to follow these visions, but it's mostly the municipality that is lagging behind. So they either don't know or they don't want to follow these visions, and they tend to be the difficult part. So, but we invited the participants to the exhibition, and the brief was very open. There was no plot of land, there was just, we asked them to design a kindergarten following a vision that centers around the experience of the child. And we'll walk through then these proposals. First one was called the Traveling Kindergarten, and the concept is that there is no kindergarten building. There is a bus that is a kindergarten. You can see it on the right side. The bus has opened its side and become a kindergarten at some spot where it has driven to. And this relates very much to the way we are living today. Anyway, we are working wherever we want to work. We have our home and we have our country house, and we are very mobile in our everyday life. So maybe our kids should also be mobile. And the bus will pick the kid up wherever we want the bus to come to, and then they go to a place where they make a stop and learn about something about the real world. So they go to the zoo, or they go to a park, or they visit an office building, or they have a field trip to the city or to the countryside. And by the end of the day, the bus drops the kids at home. So I very much like their slogan that the whole world is a kindergarten. This is a project by landscape architects, and they were dealing with quite a typical courtyard of kindergartens. So whatever the building looks like, the courtyard tends to be some rectangular piece of land, and then objects from catalogs are ordered and placed there. But they wanted to emphasize that this kind of space becomes too much defined. You know what is inside, you know what is outside, you know that a ladder is for climbing and a slide is for sliding down, and everything is so much designed that no thinking is required anymore. So their idea was to bring some in-between spaces to the kindergartens. You can see on the right hand there is a kind of a winter garden space, and also other objects in the courtyard are a bit undefined. So that leaves the options open, whatever you imagine it to be, that it will be, and it will be also much more inclusive, because now many of the younger children have the experience that they are too small or too weak to use some of the equipment. But if the equipment is not defined, then you don't have that negative experience. They also had an interesting concept, what they called the away. So this is a part, like a distant part of the courtyard that is not designed, and that is kind of away from the rest of it. So every kid, when they feel like they want to be a bit of outside the design space, or further away from the kind of official kindergarten daily activities, then they can go to this spot, and it's kind of a secret playing spot that we all used to have. Here is a concept about the organization of a kindergarten. These architects built a big model, but it looks like it's on several stories, but it can also be spread out on one story. And it works so that there are not designated rooms or for groups of children, but every child can go to any room that they want to go to, but the rooms are different types. So there is this long space. This is for physical activity and running, and this space connects other spaces. Then there are spaces for exploration. They aim to invite the child to explore and learn in this way. And then there are some simpler rooms for focusing, so if they study to play a musical instrument or paint, then they do that there. And there are small spaces if the child feels like they want to be alone or together with a friend in a smaller area. And what is interesting is that we discussed all of these ideas later also with teachers from a kindergarten, and they said that although it is a very different organization of a kindergarten, they could imagine that it's a very good idea that could work in reality also, that a teacher is not connected to a group of kids, but a teacher is connected to a certain space. That gives a different experience to the adult also, who then can focus on a certain type of activity that they feel most comfortable with. Maybe it's learning, maybe it's physical activity, and the kids choose what kind of activity they want to follow. This is a project that relates to the general plan of the city. In Tallinn we have a zone around the old town, former bastions, and it's not allowed to build anything higher there than 1 story. So the developers aren't really interested in that zone, and it's often grass, green area. But these architects started from the point of questioning why is it that kindergartens are almost like citadels or fortresses in the middle of the urban tissue, that they are not open to the outside, and there is a very distinct border between the kindergarten and the city. So you're either inside the kindergarten or you're outside of it. So they proposed that there should be a gradient. So if you walk to the kindergarten, the urban environment becomes smaller and smaller, so closer to the children's scale. And also the functions become more directed towards the kid. Be it some children's sports club or a candy store or a study place. And also the kindergarten is then in this kind of children's district. Here is a proposal that relates most to this initial container idea. This is also a module that can be just brought in wherever it's needed, but it's completely independent, energy-wise and infrastructure-wise. So, and all these systems are made clear for the kids how they work. So in a way it's also educational. How is energy produced and where is waste taken to? And they also had the idea that the whole organization of kindergartens could be different from what it is now. This module is for 5 to 6 children, and in this vision it would work so that the parents of these kids come together and they decide they want their kids to have one of those modules. They can choose a place where this module will be, and they can choose a teacher for their kids from kind of a database of teachers. And then this is how the module works. It will be placed somewhere, and the kids will be, in a way, like explorers coming out of a spaceship and going to explore the city. This is a very common idea in some countries, but in Estonia we also so far have two actually existing outdoor daycares, so they are not official kindergartens. But this is a structure to support the outdoor kindergarten. So whenever some shelter is needed from the elements, kids can go inside the structure, but the central idea of this kindergarten is that most of the time is spent outside and exploring, but also doing work like digging or having plants grow, because all in all it's all a big learning game. This is an interesting project. It's a cooperation between a group of architects and a philosopher. And they started with a memory that there was a kid whose favorite toy was not any of those fancy cars that he had, but a really simple car made out of a wooden block and some wheels. So it barely looked like a car, but that meant that this could be any car in the world, while the others were really defined what type of cars they were. And they wondered if space could be something like that. And they came up with this proposal of a flexible wall that children can interact with. And they can push it and pull it and reshape it. And in this way, different spatial solutions will appear, and they will be either left outside or inside, or separated from their friend or together with their friend. And this will give a lot of input for the imagination. What is this thing, what we are playing with, because it's very abstract. Here is also a project that was proposed in not as a model but as an installation, and the installation looked like this. And this group of architects got inspired by a typical kindergarten from a Soviet time. The building is kind of, you have seen it everywhere, it's very familiar, there's nothing really interesting about it, and also the courtyard has become the same, because although the playground equipment is new, you have seen it everywhere, so nothing makes this kindergarten special from the others. And the main emotion was that the only thing interesting was what was beyond the fence. So what's behind the fence, that's peculiar and specific to the site. So the architects were walking around in the kindergarten courtyard and peeking through the fence. And in the end, they came up with a more realistic solution of being inspired by the fence, but creating a boardwalk that uses the whole area around the kindergarten building, and again follows the same idea that nothing is really defined. It's made of wooden planks, but sometimes it's really level, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, sometimes you can crawl under it, and sometimes you can climb on top of it, and it has very many different spaces, and often it invites you to interact with it, to change it in some way. And the architects were also thinking of kindergarten's financial possibilities, that they cannot change much, but this is quite a cheap change. There is a PDF file of this exhibition. If you want to access it, then you have to follow this this route on the Estonian Architects Union webpage. Or you can just write me and I can send you it, and it's easier.